So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to those joining us online this afternoon. Welcome from downtown Dublin in the Radisson Hotel for the 4th Dublin Citizens' Assembly meeting. For those joining us online, this morning we had a summary feedback from our expert advisory group on matters that we have discussed over the last number of meetings, and we also then handed over to the Citizens' Assembly themselves, and the citizens of the Assembly have been putting together presentations, deliberating on various matters such as the structure, what type of devolved powers, and other related matters that are up for consideration, and that the citizens then this afternoon, following the presentations, will speak about how you would like the ballot paper to be shaped so you can vote on it on the 1st of October if we're in a position to do so. So for the next hour and a bit, we're going to go through the presentation from each table in this order as you have put your hands up. So it's 8, 5, 6, 11, 3, 9, 2, 7, 10, 1 and 4. I'll keep an eye on the sequence for you. When your 5 minutes are up, I'll just jump in and say your 5 minutes are up. Please give me your concluding remarks just to keep the discipline on time. I know some people might like to stay here until late in the evening and experience our fine establishments in the city centre, but I know other people have other commitments as well. So we will finish on time at 5 p.m. And so, without further haste, I will call on table 8, please, to give the first feedback, and Cathal is going to assist us as well. So table 8, please.
Thanks very much, Jim. My name is Janice, and my table has demanded that I be the one that speaks today. I was trying to shy away from it, but I'm here today now due to this. So basically, the 4th slide that we went through in relation
Janice,
to...
If I might, could you come up to the front?
Oh,
would that be great?
Yeah. Feel so special now.
Welcome, Janice. Over to you.
Thanks very much. So, yeah, finally, sorry about that, everybody. So, yeah, Janice is my name. My table has asked me to present this back to the Assembly today. So, we had a very, very frank discussion, a very open discussion. The people on the table are absolutely fantastic people, and they brought loads to the discussion. So, just want to say thanks to Nivi for taking the notes, because it was quite difficult at some stages to pin us down on exactly what we wanted. So, the 4th slide, are there any other powers that could be devolved to the directly elected mayor that should be included on the voting ballot? We had nothing to add to this part of the slide because we felt that the headings already explained and outlined what we would like to see. So that was the 4th slide we dealt with, and was really quick. We were like, no, it's okay, it's fine. So we moved on from that and we went on to the next slide then. Then the next slide, we were looking at the structures. So we obviously looked at structures A, B, C and D, and we decided that the example B was more inclined to what we were looking at and what we wanted to see represented as the directly elected mayor, but we did add a couple of bits in. So what we did was we took the working group from structure A and we added it into structure B. And the reason that we did that was we liked the concept of a more granular input from the ground that was reflected in that structure C, and that included the town councils and stuff like that, but we prefer the more simplistic approach of structure B with the inclusion of a working group from A. So we kind of pulled from each of the structures what we wanted to see the directly elected mayor to look like. So, sorry, just slide down here. So another reason that we wanted that structure was to accurately represent the local area and the town councils, and to also retain the simplicity and transparency as well as the accountability. So we also added, which was very important to us, was the oversight committee. We added that in there as well. You can probably see it up there. where we added it in, and we wanted that added in because obviously we wanted to have that oversight measure there, and we wanted it to look like do you know the audit committee that's there at the moment on councils? We wanted it to look like that, so we'd have councillors on it, you'd also have expert people on it as well, and you'd probably have some of the executives as well on that oversight committee. So that was the reason we did that. On to the next slide, where we were asked to pick from a heading. The councillors on the 20, we brought it down from 25 to 24. We brought it down to 24, so it would be an even amount. But should that need to be changed to reflect the population, that could be looked at as well. So we decided that the councillors on the 24-person New Dublin City Council Assembly, if it's agreed, should be elected by the Assembly should be elected by the public, and we decided to do it that way because it would be more representative of what the people are looking for on the ground. So if you come out to vote, you're voting for your councillors, you're also coming out to vote and you're voting for your councillors to be on this 25 panel as well. So we don't want to make the ballot too awkward, and that's where the reasoning came. So it gives the general public the opportunity to choose who will represent them on a higher level. It's best achieved through the first past the post system. That's what we were talking about. And it also stops large parties from taking over the majority of votes, which is very important for people on our group, on our table. The next question, councillors on the new Dublin City and County Council Assembly, if agreed, should be elected. And we chose based on smaller constituencies, and the reason we chose that was to allow more accurate representation, and it avoids over or under representation. So that's an important point for us on that one. And then the next one was which councillors should be made full-time, and we agreed on the table that all councillors should be made full-time. And the reason that we said that was because to ensure that only the most committed and dedicated individuals take up the role. It also reflects the value of the role and the commitment given by councillors to public service. And just to say, obviously I'm an elected councillor, and just to bring it to the personal side of it really quickly, if I had the opportunity to be a full-time councillor and not have to substitute my income with a part-time job, I would absolutely take up the role, and I would be delighted to do so. So just to give the bit of the personal aspect of it there as well, as to why people might want to have this as a full-time role and the values that would bring to that. And the next question then, should the Cabinet, if agreed, be selected by the directly elected Mayor or elected by the voters? We selected by the directly elected Mayor, and the reason that we did that was we agreed that it would give you the most competent individuals for the job at hand. So you'd have the expertise there, and the directly elected Mayor would be able to pull from that pool. The next question then, should the criteria for being a directly elected Mayor candidate be either the Dáil model or the council model? And we agreed that it should be the council model because it allows for more inclusion and represents the people more accurately. And that's as a society what we're looking to do. We're trying to be more inclusive, and I think that model is a better model. So does the rest of the group, not just me, the rest of the group. So the next slide then, the financial model. Just to say, we agreed with every single thing on this. So we'd agreed that they should be able to raise the funds from markets, loans and through investments.
Sarah, 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. So I'll just wrap it all up. We basically agreed on the structures, all of the structures as well, because we wanted to have as much power and control and funding models as we possibly could to the directly elected Mayor, so that could be a new role, but also supported by the structures that are there at the moment. But how you do that is another day's work. And I'm sorry I ran out of time, but
do you want to quickly run through the next one?
yeah, just I think that's it, Jim. I think that's all we have. We have, yeah, just that the features of the directly elected Mayor, the regular meetings should happen, and we said that the senior public servant should not be on a higher level of seniority to the directly elected Mayor. There should be a level playing field for power there, because that was a big concern that we had, that like what the point that Paul made in relation to the minister coming in and having, you know, being able to put someone out of a job and stuff like that. We don't want to see things like that happening. There has to be a level playing field there. So that's really it, because I cannot come up with any more talking points and I have no more time. Brilliant. So I hope that's okay for everybody.
Thanks, Janice.
So my name's Nicole and I'm from Table 5. So we agreed with everything that was on the list. There was some discussion about how much should be given to the directly elected mayor, but ultimately we decided that healthcare and taxation powers and revenue raising should probably be on that list too. There wasn't complete agreement. There was, I suppose, not everybody at the table agreed, so I just want to make that clear as well. A lot of us felt we should start with the basis of everything being devolved and then see what works and doesn't work from there. And just that with everything that's devolved to the DEM, there should be rationale behind it. So we went with 2 models. There wasn't full consensus across the group. So of the 2, I think we went with a mix of B and C, I think it was. So one of the ones we thought might work would be the DEM having a cabinet that is, I suppose, picked through the Hawn system, and then still having the 4 Dublin mayors in place and the councillors feeding into from the 4 sections of Dublin into those mayors and feeding into the DEM. The other example we went with was with a more localised approach, so kind of allowing, I think we had a cabinet there, I think it's the next slide. Yeah, so having the cabinet added onto it, still having the assembly, having the citizens' assembly, but having a more kind of local focus and really allowing things to really be brought down to a local level. It was kind of half and half split at the table. Not everybody agreed, so we kind of thought that those were the 2 that most of us agreed on and kind of gave the overall consensus of the group. Next one, yeah. There we go. So we thought that they should be nominated. Sorry, I'm just going to stand up because I can't see it. We thought that they should be nominated by councillors. That yes, all councillors should be paid in full, and that the cabinet should be, I suppose, decided by the DEM based on the fact that this was their cabinet who they needed to work closely with. And then we thought that. The DEM should be, the election process should be through the councillor criteria. I think that's everything. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I completely missed those slides. I didn't have those notes up with me. Can I just take a look? Yeah. Just if I can see the slides even on it. So we thought in terms of who should be able to raise funds, the DEM should be able to raise funds from markets, loans or through investment, but again at the table it wasn't the general consensus. There was kind of a mix of opinions on it. The same with where the powers are devolved from central government, budgets moved to the DEM, and the same again where powers are devolved up from local authority, budgets moved to DEM. There wasn't full agreement on them. We thought that the DEM should be able to change or introduce local taxes and revenue funding. And then again, we weren't fully in agreement on whether or not the DEM should be able to retain funds from property or motor taxes from people in Dublin, but there was generally an overall majority. It's just not full agreement.
Nicole, Table 5, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sophie, and I'm from Table 6. And please, Table 6, add anything if I forget something. Okay. So on the first slide, we've added waste and water and healthcare, including primary healthcare centres, that it's very important to include. We had mixed feelings about phasing, if phased housing is a priority. Quick wins are important. We as well also said we want written commitments for phasing. Yeah. Right, we excluded A. One felt that we shouldn't discount B, as it is a familiar structure and would be easier to implement. C is our preferred model. It's the ideal scenario which make decision making as local as possible, and that was our main argument. Assembly should be elected by voters. Group felt strongly that councillors shouldn't decide on assembly. Merit and expertise is important for assembly. Would need to run for assembly or council, but not the two. It is important that one cannot run for both. Okay. So now we are financial model? No, where are we? Oh yeah, on this one, which one am I on?
Yeah, we're on the same one now.
Oh, okay. So here we just said, should the cabinet, if agreed, be selected by the DM or elected by voters? So we said that increased level of representation at the part-time level is preferred by increasing councillors. The reasons we had debate over this. Some felt the elected mayor should create their own cabinet, but it's important that this isn't on a party basis due to bias. Merit and experience is very important. Might be necessary to stipulate in creation of cabinet. Group ensure whether a DM should be affiliated to a party. Okay. Oh yeah. So we didn't agree with the first financial model. We didn't agree with the statement that said that the elected mayor should be able to raise funds for markets and so on. We added that local government should be able to implement environmental taxation where national level is insufficient. Oops. And then what did I do? Here we are. So which one are we on now?
Features of DEM.
Okay, features of DEM. We just changed the last point to include more than one senior public servant from different departments and to stipulate that they don't have decision-making power. That's to a practical degree, as yes, some, for instance, electricity wouldn't be a good idea. Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right.
How you doing? My name is James, table 11. Hope this works okay. Right. Okay, on this slide here, points to make would be the majority supported primary health care coming under the DEM's responsibility. That was unanimous, basically. Table unanimously opposed the DEM having responsibility over policing. The majority opposed the DEM having responsibility for climate change and tourism, sport and culture. I think we felt that, it's a big job and, especially if it's just starting off, we want to get some quick wins, and we think that these will be ones that could tangibly be dealt with initially anyway. Now, the majority at the table opposed the DEM having responsibility for climate change and tourism, sport and culture. We're not saying they're not important, but relatively speaking, in terms of where the initial focus should be, we felt that maybe they weren't really within that list. The table agreed that homelessness services should be separated from general housing. It was strongly felt that they're two items that should be separated for the focus of the DEM and the team. Okay. Now, in terms of the structures, it was unanimous that structure A or example A was what we agreed upon would be best suited to the DEM and the groupings there. So what we say that the majority of the table agreed that structure A should be used with the proviso that the strength and power of the Citizens' Assembly should be comparative to that of all the Cabinet. Now, on that basis, we felt that example B, we didn't really like this one because that yellow box there in terms of the new Dublin City and Council Assembly, we felt that structure there was too many layers in it really. So we felt that we would advise eliminating that yellow box there in that regard. The majority of the table agreed that's to delete structures C and D. Now, looking at that one there, it impacts the next slide, because if you look at the two first questions here, the questions are predicated upon having that new Dublin City and County Assembly. We disagree with those, or it says that if agreed, we didn't agree with it, so we didn't answer those first two questions. We basically thought that they were kind of superfluous. The bit in red there, influence, it relates to what we did add in terms of an answer. And we're saying, as the majority objected to the City and County Council Assembly, the first two questions, as I say, are moot points, we felt. The majority favoured all councillors being elected on a full-time basis. The majority agreed that Cabinet should be selected by the DEM and councillors rather than the DEM alone. We felt that that wasn't appropriate. You need a certain number of heads to get the right decision and pick the right people, rather than leaving it down to one person. It just didn't fit right or sit right in that regard. Now we felt that the majority agreed that election criteria for the DEM should be aligned to councillor election criteria, and there were two strong objectors at the table to that. But by and large, the consensus was the same criteria should be used for the election as outlined there. In terms of the financial model, the majority favoured DEM's ability to raise funds from markets, from the market, loans and investment provided there are very strict oversights. Wouldn't rule it out, but there should be close scrutiny of it if it arises. And there was one strong objection to this. The majority favoured adopting equalisation measures to accompany the DEM's ability to raise revenue from Dublin. So in other words, if you think of all the revenue that's raised from, say, motor taxation or similar in Dublin, it shouldn't all be spent in Dublin. There should be an equalisation approach to how it's dispersed in that regard. And finally, the DEM should be required to balance their annual budget. There should be a major focus on that as good practice in that regard. Features of the DEM structure. There was one strong objection to clear mechanisms for removal of if the DEM is unethical or ineffective. But by and large, we felt that, there's going to be a need to have those kind of factors put in place. But one person should be noted and felt that it wasn't appropriate to do that at this point in time. The majority took view that all decision-making groups should aim for inclusion. A minority was strongly opposed to positive discrimination of any kind. So not just gender-based, it should be all other factors regarded in terms of those criteria. That was the point there. That was really it. So, okay.
Thank you, James.
Thanks
so much.
Hi guys, I'm Luke from Table 3. And to say we had a good discussion earlier on, we agreed a lot on some clear points, and then we had some disagreements that raised good questions. Based on the functions to devolve, we felt like primarily that we agreed with the slide that Breed throwed up, that it was a good representation of what we felt, how the powers and how they should be prioritised being devolved. But we noted that healthcare was missing from the sheet that we got. We thought that the Gaeltacht and GAA could be devolved locally, that arts was a very important thing also to localise in the community, that environment should be included within climate change. And then there was a discussion about primary and secondary education, that proportions of certain elements can be devolved straight away, and then over time some other more difficult things that are centralised could be devolved. And the same with things like healthcare. And then, but overall, I think for the functions, we kind of came to an agreement that everything noted and that was voted on the last time should be devolved in phase 1, and what would be possible or feasible to devolve, we could devolve, and then adding on things over time that could follow later. So then we went to the structure, and we had again we have 2 examples that we kind of resolved upon, and the interesting thing was what was kind of consistent among them and what was different. So in the centre where we have the assemblies, we felt in both examples that the new Dublin City County and City Assembly should be bolstered by the Citizens Assembly and the Plenary Council from the local government branches below. And that should act as a policy maker for the DEM, but also as a way to hold the DEM's office accountable. A big thing that we landed on as well on the table was that the Director General or the CEO is someone that is appointed directly by the DEM, and that's a way for policy then to be implemented among the lower levels of government. So in this example, we thought that a remaking of the existing 4 councils would be a good option to go. And then there was some disagreement on that. Some people on the table felt that a devolution into the towns' councils would be more sort of representative and a kind of a better reform for everybody in Dublin. But as you see here in the middle, I think the core agreement that we had was that this new assembly as a branch between local government and the DEM was good. Here we had almost full agreement in terms of what was in terms of the features of the DEM's office. The disagreement that we had with the councillors on the 25 Dublin Assembly, that we were unsure in our discussions whether it's better that they were elected directly from the public or nominated by councillors. The side that was on having it directly elected by the council felt that it was a better representation and for the people of Dublin, whereas on the nominated by councillor side, the discussion was more around how if they're nominated by the councillor, they're more informed to feed into that council discussions at the higher level. So they're bringing ideas up from the ground. Then on the other points, we really unanimously agreed on these, that the councillors should be made up of the smaller constituents within the Dublin new structure. But we were the point on this was that they should come from however the green is decided upon here or structured, that the councillors on the assembly should be coming directly from there. Which councillors should be made full-time? We agreed that they should be full-time, that the cabinet or the office of the mayor should be selected by directly the mayor. We agreed on that. And that we also agreed, and this was a nice point actually, that unanimously we agreed that it should be aligned with the 18-year-old, and the mayor doesn't have to be a citizen of Dublin. That I suppose it's up to the people of Dublin to decide who is best to choose. And then for these points as well, we in green or in yellow we sort of unanimously agreed on all of these, but then we sort of added in some questions that came from the discussion, and that where powers should be devolved, that as the power devolves, the budget devolves with the power. So things that are more situated in local levels should be funded at the local level, and then as they go up in scale, they should continue. We thought that the DM should have power to propose new taxation, but that it should be subject to ratification of the new assembly, and then that the discussion around the percentage of the budget raised should be retained in the area. That was a discussion around how the money going back to central government from Dublin. We felt that needs to be a negotiated thing over the term of the mayor, and then. Yeah, so these points as well, I mean, they're all on the sheets. We kind of, we unanimously kind of agreed on those as well. So I think that's everything. Yeah, and then one of the main points we thought that the DM should be submitting a 5-year strategy related to the budget for the Assembly to kind of agree on and to be able to hold the mayor accountable for the outcomes of that strategy. Another point was that the comment that there should be a senior public servant on the mayor's office, that should be someone appointed directly by the mayor, not somebody that's appointed by central government or within the council itself, that the mayor gets to choose that senior civil servant who helps operate. And that's everything. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hello. We decided to do it with 2 people, not because of extreme divisions on the table or anything, just because we thought it'd be nice.
Liven it up a bit.
Yeah. Although obviously there are extreme divisions.
There are.
Great. Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, we are...
I'm Michael.
And I'm Peter. So our group generally agreed about the powers that can be devolved. Yeah, we agreed that policing could come in at a later date. It's probably pretty difficult to bring it in at the beginning. Same with healthcare. Yeah. Alongside climate change, that'll be pretty difficult to devolve. It's probably best that's kept at a national level for a more effective response. So, yeah, next slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we chose example B as a good structure, kind of very similar to London. And we just thought it was a simpler structure, and that was a bit better in the sense that you could keep the same local authorities, and we'd have mostly ceremonial powers as is, and chairing powers for the deputy mayors, because it would overlap otherwise. There were two things in particular. I think we thought that having the group in yellow would be important for kind of a citywide accountability for the mayor. So it's not just 4 smaller councils kind of carping at them ineffectively. It's actually one body that can hold them to account. And then for the cabinet, we said they could be councillors, but I wouldn't restrict it to that. And you could have, as they do in other cities, some experts, some people who work in the sector, and some politicians as well.
So yeah, we went with the 25-person City County Assembly, and we were a bit split on how they would be elected, whether they would be elected by the public or if they would be nominated by as councillors. It would be a fairly complicated ballot paper if the electorate had to vote on local councillors, members of the County Assembly and a new mayor. There was the suggestion of anonymous voting to reduce party politics, and the merits of publicly elected assembly members to increase representation citywide were noted. Regarding the councillors, if they should be elected, if they should be made full-time even, we didn't reach a consensus on that either. Many councillors find it difficult to complete the work on a part-time basis, and so following on that more power and responsibility should lead to more work, it would make sense to make them full-time. However, there was disagreement at the table regarding that. And should they be selected by the DM if elected by voters? We felt the cabinet members should be selected by the DEM. However, there were some concerns that the cabinet members shouldn't be all from the same party if the DEM is from a particular political party. However, some group members felt that the cabinet members didn't have to be councillors, as is the case in London. Perhaps instead they could be experts in that area. So yeah.
Okay. So this one, like a lot of people, I think we found we agreed with a lot of it, which was, yes, they should be able to borrow or raise funds. As someone previously said, budgets should generally follow functions. They should be able to introduce local taxes, and certainly some of the funds from property and motor taxes. Obviously, there's more detail to that, but we kind of broadly agreed with that. However, some people pointed out that the proposal wouldn't be accepted by central government. A body this assembly has come to hate, clearly.
So, thank you. So in general, we agreed that the role should be kind of above party politics. One person felt that the party politics should be completely removed from the position and not have any political affiliation on the ballot paper. But some of us felt that it was informative to know what political party or ideology lines that a mayor would operate on. We agreed that a minimum of about 40% of groups, councillors related to the DEM should be women. And we agreed it makes sense that the standards are agreed nationally. For example, in education, that the curriculum is set at a national level, but some of the more local implementations like land use and acquisition could be done locally as well.
And then final slide, hopefully we're not over our time. We thought a lot of this was fairly non-controversial and likely to happen anyway. Like, I'd hope the directly elected mayor will be meeting with ministers regardless of what we put in legislation, or that they create working groups. We did say that maybe the accountability mightn't necessarily be done by an oversight or monitoring committee, but that's why we liked B, because it has accountability built in. It has an assembly that's already going to keep them accountable, or at least try to. And then we agreed, there should be a senior public servant that would work closely with the DEM. I guess in some ways they'd probably be a bit like a minister or something with the department and some senior civil servants there. That was us. That was our lovely table.
Table 9. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Meena from Table 2. So the first slide we have, so on this slide we agreed on most of these. We have one inclusion for primary health care, and especially around the infrastructure, for example, premises and all for local GPs, and how it should be supported through localization. We agreed on rest of the points. So for the second slide, of the six of us, we spent a lot of time on the structure, and the rest of the slides we spent really for little time. Structure, and still we haven't come to agreement. So 5 out of 6 of us agreed that we don't like structure A because there's not enough accountability for the DEM. And then the structure B, C, and D, we didn't get to agreement on them. However, C was favored a little bit more than B and D. The only caveat there is there were concerns about the practicality of how that might work, given it's so new. So on the rest of the slides then, on this slide, we did not get to discuss point 1, 2, and 4. So 3, we agreed, mostly agreed that all councillors should be full-time and also be equally remunerated to match the increase in their powers. So if we are talking about devolving more powers to local authorities, then the time they should be spending is more, but also they should be remunerated accordingly. And on point 5, we agreed citizenship should not be a requirement. However, on the age aspect, we discussed a little bit 18 is too young, and how, social media can make an 18-year-old a DEM if we put them in there in the mix. So we discussed about that a little bit. And financial model. So here we talked about, on the first point, we talked about loans, and we said there were concerns about what kind of loan will be amassed on a city, and how will the mechanisms be working, and how it will be managed if DEM is allowed to go get loans for the council. And the last point was we wanted to say there's maybe another way of looking for funds, corporate tax, maybe half and half, or sharing, or a part of company taxes for council, and additionally get large corporations to spend a part of their corporate social responsibility funds on council or local areas. So that's us.
Okay, Mia, thank you.
Hi, my name is Evie. I'm from Table 7. And we kind of skipped over, well, we just had general consensus and didn't change much in our first few slides, so we mostly focused on the structure, so that's what I'll spend my time on. We kind of went with a hybrid of A and B in that we took the structure of B with the assembly, but then we added in the working groups from A. We kind of felt that the assembly was like a previous group said, that it kind of gave automatic oversight and checks and balances, and we felt that was very important. And then by adding in the working groups, you get that expert insight and making sure that policies are being made by people who actually know what they're talking about as well. So we also said that the cabinet should have a sufficient number of councillors to deal with each of the powers that we choose to devolve. So if we were going to devolve 10 powers, there should then be 10 councillors on the cabinet, so that everyone could get an individual portfolio and people wouldn't be overstretched if there was a smaller cabinet. We also felt that the CEO should be, like the current CEOs should be abolished, and that there should be kind of a Director General to assist the DEM with a staff underneath them to make sure that everything is running smoothly and to actually get the policies implemented. And then we also felt that the councillors should be elected by the public, and then from the councillors the assembly is nominated by the fellow councillors. so that you're not like doing double elections where you elect your councillors and then you go back again and you elect an assembly from them. So that kind of ties then into the next slide. So yeah, they should be nominated by the councillors, and then it kind of, that made the second point there fall away, because it just was, if it's going to be nominated by the councillors, it's obviously not a question. And then on point 3 there, we thought that this was going to be contingent on the structure that was chosen. So a smaller cabinet should be, if it was going to be a smaller cabinet, they should be full-time. There are larger assembly, or councillors who aren't in the cabinet or assembly could be part-time. It would very much depend on the system that was chosen. There was a good point made that you can't, like, part-time should be available, because business people who have other jobs shouldn't be ruled out from doing it. If you want to get a broad spectrum of people, you need to kind of have that flexibility there, that it shouldn't have to be a full-time position. And then on point 4, we agreed that the cabinet should be selected by the elected councillors, but we thought it was important that there was a geographical, and by that we mean among the 4 councils, balance there, so that there wouldn't be any regional disparities. And then, yeah, there was kind of general agreement in our group that all of these points should be open for consideration in regards to finances. But we did say that if there was going to be like raising funds on international markets, there should be like full transparent and oversight and everything, and checks and balances put in place to make sure that that was done properly. And then the group was very in favour of equalisation, so we felt that the DEM shouldn't be able to retain all of the funds that are raised in Dublin, because obviously that would disadvantage the rest of the country. But we did say that property tax could probably stay in Dublin, and then motor tax could be redistributed nationally. And then finally, we were generally agreed on all of these kind of being options. In relation to schools in particular, we thought that the DEM should have a role in deciding where they go, but it should be done in conjunction with the Department of Education, so there should be sort of communication and back and forth there. And then finally, we said that the minister shouldn't have any role in the removal of the DEM, because you wouldn't want it to be politically motivated, that if they were of the same party that they would refuse to remove, or if they were opposite. But yeah, that's everything from Table 7.
Hi, my name is Ross from Table 10. We had lots of good debate. Didn't come to a full consensus on everything, but a lot of agreement, a few bits of disagreement. But in terms of powers given to the mayor to be devolved to the mayor, the only thing we added was emergency services to be devolved, such as fire and ambulance services, presumably as a city and county-wide system. In terms of the structures, we're sort of evenly split between structure C and structure B. I believe nobody voted for structure D. Most of us thought that a localness should be highlighted in terms of a more localized system in terms of the relationship between the people and their councillors. I think that's that one. And then on to the onto the questions of how the possible new Dublin Assembly could be organised. We said the council. We said the councillors on that assembly should be elected by the public. We were unsure on the question of the constituencies, whether it should be one big constituency or several smaller constituencies. That was a bit of a, we were a bit unsure on that. We thought that, I think most of us thought that councillors elected to the citywide assembly would be full-time, and if there was a town council layer underneath that, those councillors would probably be better to be part-time. In terms of the cabinet, that was quite vigorously debated and questioned in terms of what kind of cabinet there should be or how that should operate. I think the majority thought that a directly elected mayor should be able to select their own cabinet, but obviously that does come with certain problems, potential for cronyism and corruption and bias and so forth. So there probably would need to be some sort of system of perhaps the mayor would have to put his cabinet selections in front of the councillors, and perhaps they could veto if they think they're unsuitable people, or if they're concerned with cronyism and that type of thing. Checks and balances. We all, I think we all unanimously agreed that the electability criteria would be on the councillors, i.e. you just have to be 18 years of age, and you wouldn't have to be an Irish citizen. I think we didn't really consider that to be an issue at all. It's whatever the people want to vote for they should be free to vote for that. And then the last issue was the mayor's budget should probably be subject to some sort of checks and balances system with the councillors. Potentially the mayor might have to get his budget passed by the councillors, perhaps they can reject it. Yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gerard from Table 1, and I suppose I should begin by quoting those infamous words of Henry VIII to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon: "I won't be keeping you long." With regard to the powers to be devolved to the DEM, we noted that there were two lacunas in this particular area. One was that healthcare was left off, but following discussions, we believed that there was a much too complex issue and decided to leave it. And the second issue was with regard to the water. That was not on the list, but again, as it was felt that this was being dealt at a national level, it was better to leave it to Irish Water. With regard to the four structures, we believe that at the table, example D was preferred, although there was some discussion with regard to the other issues. One opinion wanted to include that town councils should be in the diagram, because the more councillors are needed to improve representation. Other citizens felt that structure D would benefit without a citizens' assembly, so deleting the citizens' assembly, because this would add an extra layer of complexity to the issue. With regard to example C, as we were practically agreed on D, it was felt that a little bit of C kind of mixed in would also be appropriate. And it was also felt that C, in C, possibly a cabinet might hold portfolio. So people on that, each individual would hold a portfolio. With regard to these 4 issues here, number 1, we felt there was a 50-50 split there, but not just a 50-50 with regard to numbers, but with a mix of both ideas. And that would seem to have satisfied everybody at table 1. With regard to number 2, that is councillors of the new area, Dublin City. It was felt that councillors could be nominated by people to the Assembly. There was also other suggestions that the public could elect assemblies, and that some others wanted the Assembly to be elected by both public and by the councillors. With regard to councillors on the new City Council or Assembly, if it was agreed, these should be elected on the basis of smaller constituencies or smaller areas. The reasoning behind this was that if one area was selected for the election as a whole, it was likely that councillors would be or could fall from just one area, small area within Dublin. There was also some discussion with regard to which councillors should be given, or should councillors be given a salary which is equivalent to a full-time role. That was how we would have rephrased that number 3. Further discussion was that all councillors deserved to be properly reimbursed for their work, and that we felt that there was a need for clarity really on what we actually mean by full time. Also, there was some discussion with regard that if the cabinet, as if it is agreed, be selected by the DM or by elected by voters, we felt that the cabinet should be elected by the DEM, and the reasoning behind that was that this would standardise the election as in other systems. We felt that the criteria for to become the DEM, or a candidate, should we say, for the DEM, should be aligned to councillors' elected criteria, or election criteria. By that we mean that they would be over 18 and not necessarily a citizen of Ireland. It was noted, however, that we should add that they should be resident within the Dublin area. Others said that this was unnecessary, as it would, some would struggle to appeal to voters if they were not resident within the area, and because that would also exclude people who live outside of Dublin but who commute daily to work within Dublin. So these are some of the differences of opinion that actually arose in this question. With regard to the features for the DEM structure, we made some changes here, and we added on number 4 that the DEM convenes meetings with local and national agencies to implement policies, progress goals in order to achieve efficiency, reduce duplication, and advance a vision. We thought that the features there would have been improved by that contribution. With regard to features for the DEM structure, we had an open discussion with this, but while we would suggest that while the DEM is in post, that they should not, or rather be better if they did not, take a paid employment or take a representational position that would be financially rewarding. The reasoning behind this is because being a politician, many people will have additional jobs and additional incomes, as we have seen quite recently within the news. It's also felt that councillors should be, the pay of councillors should be renewed and should follow the European norms on pay and terms. And finally, with regard to the financial mode for the DEM, we decided that the first section there, first statement there, should be removed, but also felt that local authorities could go to the markets to find financial assistance, but that this presented great financial risks as local authorities ran the risk of becoming bankrupt. It was also noted that if DM was to look to the markets for larger loans, that this would have to be approved, usually by the minister in any case. We also felt that that the idea of motor tax could be split within that statement and should read that the DEM can convene a budget meeting and has the overall leadership on city budgets for major infrastructural projects, and the DEM could access central government fundings through loans or grants. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed, and thanks to my assistant.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Table 4. I have the pleasure of going last, so at this stage everybody else is concentrated on something else and hoping I'm hurrying up. So our table was very precise in relation to what their views were, and there was consensus on nearly all of the matters that we proposed. Where there was dissent, I will highlight it. So for the first category, in relation to what powers will be dissolved, there was 2 extra factors that we felt would be beneficial to be within the domain of directly elected mayor. That was waste management, to ensure that there is a streamlined and coordinated approach across the county in relation to that service. And then community health care, and the rationale for this was to ensure that the city is being facilitated at a city approach, and to ensure that community facilities are provided where they're needed, and that they're core to the infrastructure of the city. So often there was a discussion at our table in relation to developments going up without facilities, etc., being put in place, but that community healthcare facilities would be within the responsibility of directly elected mayor. So our table looked at all the slides proposed in relation to structure and agreed with none of them. But we did take bits and pieces out of them. So we came up with a variation of structure C. There was a strong view from my group that smaller, more defined town councils would be much better facilitating getting the core view at the ground divulged to the top. So breaking down the large council systems that are in place at the moment, and that there would be much smaller defined areas, so that those working in those areas would be able to facilitate the public better. However, we had a bit of a concern that the idea of maybe 20-25 town councils feeding into one assembly might not work directly. So a potential for a second layer, not officially a council, but some sort of second layer to funnel all the views, but that we were happy with keeping the assembly and thought that was very important. But I suppose the core and the very definitive view of my group was that the Director General would be below the DEM, that they would not be on par with them, that the DAM would be overall and would have overall responsibility, and that there would be one as opposed to 4 existing chief executives at the moment. Going down to how it would be, so there wasn't full agreement on the table in relation to how they'd be elected. I think there was more majority moving towards being elected by the public themselves, but there was also some that viewed that being nominated directly by the council. Very strong views in relation to how, so based on smaller constituencies, was very much seen that to ensure representation across the board and fair representation, that it would come from smaller areas. In relation to full-time, I think there was nearly a consensus of full-time on all bases. However, it was conditional on what structure was finally agreed. So that's where we are. In relation to the cabinet, that it be elected by the voters, there was some discussions in relation to the criteria. We all agreed the criteria be the same as the council criteria and not conditional on citizenship. There was some discussion in relation to having an additional criteria of experience. However, there wasn't agreement on it. Moving on to the financial model, we were very much agreeing that most of these would stay in place. We were in agreement that they should be able to take out loans for large investments and to be able to facilitate large projects such as big transport models, that this would be helpful and beneficial, but that there be checks and balances and regulation in relation to what type of loans, what they were for, and that was very important, that they couldn't just take out loans for anything, that it was very much the loans would be very much governed and regulated. There was discussion in relation to local property tax, that there was consensus within our team that the local property tax should absolutely stay within the DEM. There wasn't consensus on the motor tax. I suppose the argument there was people's properties are where they are, they're in the county. However, people from Dublin travel outside Dublin, vice versa, and how feasible and practical it would be to ensure that the motor tax would be within the directly elected mayor's domain. Moving on to the structures, I suppose we agreed to all of these and we added a few. There should be regular meetings with the DEM and town councils. We felt that was a given and that it was an absolute compulsory. Then additionally, clear communication mechanisms between the councils and the DEMs, so that there be a formal process outlined in the structure. And the DEM accountability. To whom would the DEM be accountable? Would it be the minister or other accountability mechanisms? So I suppose this goes to some of the discussions in relation to the monitoring committee. There was some concerns that we want a directly elected mayor to be able to have functions and be able to get on and do work, and that if there was oversight and difficulties in relation to multiple committees, that might be a problem. So I think there was probably still a little bit more to develop in relation to accountable, ensuring who is he accountable to and how he can proceed. That's us.
Thanks, Rachel and Table 4. I must say, EAG, you might be unemployed for 3 weeks' time for the last meeting. Very impressed with everyone's knowledge there. I know it's a very complex area, but those presentations were very impressive from the groups. So I'd like to thank Janice, Nicole, Sophie, James, Luke, our new Anton Deck, Michael and Peter, Mina, Evie, Ross, Gerard, Rachel, for being so brave to come up to the top table and give the presentation. I'll give them a bill of us. That empowerment exercise certainly worked. We're going to take that away, bring it all together and send the pack out to you, because we'll be convening, we plan, in 3 weeks' time. So we'll need to distill all the information and push it back to you. What I propose now is that we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is posing some structures for you to consider, that you do some roundtable discussions and then give us some feedback, and then we'll conclude. But before we do, I propose a 5-minute comfort break, so it could be all back in their seats by 15:30, that's 3:30. Thank you.